Social media has possibly changed some of the assumptions, or as at least challenged some of the assumptions that we used to make about free speech. Because free speech is very much about whatever the consequences of your speech, it should be allowed. Again, putting aside the defamation and the fighting words and a few others. But social media says, well, the consequences of some of this speech that was traditionally or currently tolerated could be quite dire, right? Now there is a category of speech, incitement, and that is and so when I was doing research, I'm trying to remember right now, but there is that category that you're not allowed to go in front of people and say, let's go get him, let's inciting violence, and that in criminal law, that's like solicitation. It could be conspiracy, that kind of speech, and so that's clearly prohibited. But there's a distinction between, and they make this distinction. The Supreme Court, I think, has made this distinction between inciting violence and preaching
Mm,
violence. So you might have be a revolutionary theorist, and you think that you're a Marxist or a Marxist Leninist or whatever, and you think that we need a violent revolution. Even Thomas Jefferson thought we needed a violent revolution every 20 years. Um, and so you might preach that either as a academic or as a citizen. And currently that is permissible because it's more theoretical, right? Um, and I guess I'm still a traditionalist in that sense. I think we should allow, they talk about the marketplace of ideas, but you're right that the marketplace of ideas is dramatically skewed now by social media. And so you might get people that are preaching, not inciting violence, to be quite effective. And I mean, we already have people that, social media has led to people joining ISIS. I mean, it's led to a lot of violence,
right.
directly or indirectly. And I don't know. I just don't know that we change our framework to accommodate social media. But I don't have strong opinions either way. I mean, um, we are the United States is a violent country. Okay, we
Hmm.
just are.
Yeah.
And we just look at gun violence alone. I mean, and it always has been. Um, and so I don't think you can make a consequentialist argument against. I would be wary of any consequentialist arguments against free speech, saying, "Well, you're adding even more violence." Well, how much more? And where do we draw the line? Well, when you reach this level of violence, then you got to suppress free speech. I just think that's a very dangerous road to travel. Yeah.
There's a common this term slippery slope. People use slippery slope without, I think, really understanding what it means, but it really comes a lot from First Amendment law, which is that, well, if you make it okay to censor this kind of speech, then it's going to become easier to censor the next kind, and something that seems way out of bounds now, that the goalposts will essentially change. And that's I am inclined to agree with you. I wouldn't say I'm a free speech absolutist. I don't think anybody really is. But I think with you where I'm like, words are not violence. Violence is violence. It's interesting that on a lot of college campuses, people have actually said, no, words are violence. And that if you, there's a lot of this has come about with, I think in recently has been around transgender people who are seen to be uniquely vulnerable to self-harm, we'll say. So one of the things I'm struggling with here is that this whole conversation is going to be read by an algorithm, and that's going to decide whether or not this video should be demonetized or conflict or whatever. So there's a particular word for self-harm that I'm avoiding using, which is unfortunate because it's an important issue. But they're saying that if you will invalidate it's something like gender dysphoria or anything about the trans experience, that could very well lead to a lot of people self-harming. And so therefore, this speech in particular is a form of violence.